Hey, hi friends. It's been a while since I've done a fun little tutorial. My daughter is obsessed with the summer that I'm turned pretty, and I watched it with her because anything I can do to spend time with my almost teenager, I will do. And it got me thinking about hydrangeas. And if you painted before, I'm guessing that you've probably painted flowers, probably roses, probably daisies. And hydrangeas are one I feel like there's an interesting play, some interesting techniques we can do. So let's have some fun. These are going to be bellies, hydrangeas. And all right, so we're going to get started. I'm going to show you my materials. So I'm working with my traditional palette, which is black, white, red, yellow, and blue. So we're going to mix up all our secondary colors. I'm working with phthalo blue. You could also use ultramarine if that's what you have, but I love phthalo because it mixes well both greens and blues. So that's my palette. For brushes, I've got 3 brushes. I have a large, a medium, and a small. My large brush here is a 1-inch flat. I'm going to call this my daddy brush. My medium brush here, oh, it's curved. My medium brush is a round brush. I'm going to call this my mama brush. And then I have a small detail brush. I'm going to call this one baby. And yes, I've got large, medium, small, daddy, mama, baby. I name the brushes just so it's really easy to communicate which brush to use when. I also have a cup with water to wash my brushes, some paper towels to wipe my brushes on after I'm done washing them. And then I've got a canvas. Mine is a 16 by 20, but you could work with any standard rectangular canvas that you have on hand. Okay. I will quickly introduce myself if you've never painted with me before. My name is Maria, but I go by Miss Pickles. I obsess about pickles. They're my favorite thing. And I have been doing step-by-step painting lessons for about 7 or 8 years, maybe 9 by now, honestly. And I love it. I think it's a great way, especially for people that want to learn how to paint and don't have the confidence yet with all the brushes and mark making. It's a great way to start because you're going to go spend about an hour, hour and a half, paint with me. I'll give you all the steps. And at the end, you'll have a beautiful painting to show. So the only thing I ask, and we're going to take a quick oath, is this. I want you to repeat after me. You're going to say, I promise to relax and have a good time. To relax and have a good time. I promise not to criticize myself or my painting. Okay, that's very important. When you're working as an artist, the best thing you can do is get out of your own head and your own tendency to criticize or judge yourself. So with that being said, let's get started, shall we? Okay, first things first, we're going to work on the background. What I have in the background here is something that sort of gives the texture and look of, oh, this is a wood, maybe fence or paneling. And I've got greenery here towards the bottom. So we need to paint in our background with this sort of beige brown wood look, and then get some texture in with some greens for all of our leaves. All right, so you're going to use your daddy brush to start. So grab a large brush. Again, I'm using a 1-inch flat, but you can use whatever you have that's big. Get your brush wet. Always a good habit to wet your brushes before they go into paint. And we're going to start by mixing up a brown. All right. Now, the easiest way to mix a brown is to mix orange and then add little bits of black to it until you get a nice brown and maybe a little bit of white too. That's the easiest way to do it. Traditionally, we could mix our primary colors, so red, yellow, blue, mix those in equal amounts and get to a brown, but it takes a lot more color correcting, I found. So I'm going to show you the easy way. So I'm going to take yellow, scoop of yellow, scoop of red. I'm going to swirl those together. So just mixing a nice orange. And then I'm slowly going to add little bits of black. So again, when mixing in brown, I think it's easiest to think of it as a dark orange. And so a great way to do that is to mix up that orange and then just slowly add little bits of black. Now I am mixing with my brush because that's going to be the most standard tool that everybody has available to mix with. If you are just starting to paint and you haven't picked up a palette knife yet, highly recommend this. This is a very inexpensive tool. It's going to be less than $10, and it will save you over time in the amount of paint that you waste, because all the paint that was in my bristles just went in my paint water cup because I got to wash my brush to get ready for the next step. When you have a palette knife, you can just grab little bits of that paint, swirl, 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 da, 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 and bam, shazam, right? I got a nice brown to work with here, just like that. So as you're mixing up your brown, I'm going to talk to you really quickly about my process in case you've never painted with me before. The way I work is we're going to go step by step, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, hopefully not 7, 8, 9, 10. And I'm going to give you a verbal instruction. So I'm going to tell you what we're going to do. Then I'll do a visual demonstration. I'll show you what we're going to do. And I'm also going to have written instructions as well. So that way kind of covers all the bases of how we learn. After I'm done with the step, you can pause the video. And that way you don't feel rushed. I tend to talk fast and paint fast. I've got puppy energy, and I don't want you to feel like you have to keep up with me because that can be anxiety inducing. Know that after I do the visual demonstration, I'm going to remind you that it's a great time to pause the video and finish the step. Cool? Fantastic. All right, so let's get into it. Like I said, I was mixing with my brush. Now I need to wash my brush. Palette knives are amazing. So I'm going to wash my brush, scrub the bristles on the bottom of the cup. And then I'm going to wipe it on a paper towel, just like that. And I'm going to grab white to start. And I'm going to start painting vertical brush strokes of white. Now, I know this is not interesting to look at visually because I'm painting white on a white canvas. But what we need to do is streak in some brown. Okay, so for the wood, we're going to start with a little bit of white all over sort of the top half of our canvas. So just streaking in that white. And now that I've got some white on the canvas, I'm going to grab some more white, and I'm going to dip into just a little bit of that brown. So I've got white and brown loaded on my brush, and we're going to start streaking that in vertically. Now, when you're working with acrylics, water is the magic sauce. Dipping your brush into your water cup as you paint helps the paint to move across the surface. Dip into like a little bit more of the brown here. What we're looking for is something nice and streaky. It's a very scientific word, streaky. So I'm streaking in that white, little bits of brown. And you don't need to take this all the way to the bottom because we're going to be painting in that green shrubbery, those green leaves that surround the hydrangeas. We're going to be painting those in sort of that bottom area. So don't worry too much about getting the entire background covered with the white and brown. Now, also in my example, I have some grays. So to mix a gray, I'm going to take a nice scoop of white, a little tiny bit of black, and I'm just mixing up a quick little gray. And that I'm going to streak in also. I like this because it gives the look of sort of aged wood, which I think is cool. All right, so let me go through it again. This step was to start with the sort of wood portion of the background. So you're taking white and streaking that vertically through sort of the upper half. I did bring it down a little bit farther here. So I started with white. I added a little bit of brown to my brush and sort of streaked some of that through the white. And then I mixed up a little bit of gray and streaked that through as well. Okay, so let me give you a couple minutes to do that. It's a great time to pause the video as you're just catching up. And when I come back, we'll go ahead and start adding the details to the wood part of our little background. Okay, so next thing's next. We're gonna add the sort of wood details that suggest the texture of wood. We don't actually have to paint wood. We just need to give a couple of little suggestions that nudge the viewer to know that this is wood behind the hydrangeas. So we're gonna do a couple things. We are gonna add some board separations. So 3 vertical lines going down. Maybe some additional lines that show sort of a little bit of grains, wood grain. And then I added a couple of knots of wood. And I also, see, I did a little bit of dry brushing just to get a little extra texture. So this step is just adding some additional visual information to the background, specifically the wood part. So for this, I'm going to switch over and use the baby brush. So little baby. I'm going to go ahead and get my brush wet first. And I'm going to get right into some brown paint. So we're going to start with the board separations, meaning the lines that separate our wood boards. And these are just going to be vertical lines. And it's very easy for me to say, hey, paint 3 vertical lines. It might feel a little challenging if you haven't done a lot of painting, because you're going to be really obsessed with making sure they're super, super straight. Try not to worry about that. My hint here is to start at the top and work your way down. It's a lot easier to make a straight line when you're having gravity pull your arm down with you, as opposed to like working against gravity. So anytime you make a vertical line, think down, up to down. Easier way to do it. And also I'm going to brace my finger against the canvas. That's one way to have a lot more control of your bristles, is to put either your knuckle or your pinky finger. There we go. So either this way or this way. Just gives you a little more stability with your bristles. So here we go. I'm going to find the approximate center. I'm going to say it's right here. And I'm just going to pull a line down as straight as I can. Just like that. Okay, my line has a couple of wobbles, but I'm not worried about it. This is like an aged wood background. So if it has a little wibbly wobblies, it's totally fine. Okay, I got to make 2 more of those. I'm just going to cut the distance in half for both. So there's another one. There you go. 1, 2, 3. I've got my board separations there. Now, as you're making your 3 lines, I'm just going to remind you really quickly that if you are new to painting, you don't practice regularly, you must know that it takes quite a while to become an expert of making lines or brush marks look exactly how you want them to. So keep that in mind. If your vertical lines don't look perfect, know that it's just something you need to practice. There's nothing wrong with you. You just haven't had enough practice painting vertical lines. And like I said, for this painting, it's perfect because we don't need, absolutely straight and defined. This is supposed to be a little aged looking. So fabulous. Next, I'm going to go in and add some additional wood grain. So I'll bring this up. I know a lot of artists that do tutorials just do an overhead view. And someday I would like to get to where I have a camera that can be on this painting while I'm painting, but I'm still just working with one camera at a time. So I will be bringing up the canvas so you can see a little closer what I'm up to. So for the wood grain lines, all I'm going to do is just make, let's do 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm good with that. Looks like some extra grain for the wood. Hold this up for just a second. Again, I just made a smattering of little lines. And I'm going to put some knots in the wood. So we did the board separations. We did some lines to show some of the texture of the wood grain. And next, I'm going to do a few knots in the wood. So I'm going to start with a curved line, like that. Bring this line up a little bit further. It looks like an upside down question mark, right? Or a floss pick. I love flossing. And another one coming down, like that. So a question mark coming up, a question mark coming down. And now I'm going to add a few more lines around. Maybe a little extra right in the center there. I'll hold this up for a sec. And again, you can pause at any time if you feel like you need to. I'm going to put one more, I think, right down here. Maybe right here. And I'm using brown in the baby brush. So I think right about here. So I've got 2 of those knots. We don't need a ton of them because in the example, most of that background is covered up in our hydrangeas. We just need to give the little idea to the viewer that this is a wood background. All right. And the last thing to do here is just kind of zhuzh it a little bit, give it a little extra love. So to do that, I'm going to do some dry brushing, which is a fun technique. In a lot of, it can add a lot of texture. And for this, it really does bring that sort of aged look to the wood. I'm switching back over to my daddy brush. I washed the brush. And I'm going to come in and dry. You could use an actual dry brush if you have extras, but I'm just going to squeeze out most of the moisture. It'll be fine. I've got a little bit of gray, just sort of right at the tip of the bristles. And I'm just gonna lightly drag that gray bring it a little closer so you can see. Just drag that gray down. And you can do the same thing with your brown, with your white. The more dry brushing that you do, the more amplified the texture is going to be. So there's no wrong way to do it. I got a little bit of white here. Oop. So maybe I have some white right here. right here. Okay, so this step was adding all the details to the wood part of our background. So we started with the board separations with the baby brush and brown, making those vertical lines. Then we came in and added some additional vertical lines, shorter ones, just showing some grain, wood grain texture. Then we added some knots, and finally a little bit of dry brushing, and we're good. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video if you need to, if you need a few more minutes to catch up. And when we come back, we're going to add our greenery at the bottom. All right, I'll see you guys in just a few. Okay, my friends, so we're going to add our greenery now. I'm going to bring the example a little closer, and I think this is an important part of this lesson, and why I chose hydrangeas specifically. If you take a look, right, it looks like hydrangeas sitting in the bushes, but coming closer, there's not a ton of detail in those bushes. I didn't actually paint any leaves really, with the exception of maybe this looks like a leaf shape. I'm taking advantage of the fact that as artists, we can direct what people are looking at based on the amount of detail that it contains. So by not having much detail in these bushes, it really helps our viewers' eyes to focus really solely on maybe a little bit of the wood in the background and then the hydrangeas themselves. So let's paint some greenery. For the greenery, we're going to need green, correct. So we're going to mix one up. I'm going to work with my daddy brush. Got to wash that. And green is yellow and blue. I'm going to add a little tiny bit of black to mine. So I'm going to take a nice scoop of yellow, a smaller scoop of blue. If you're working with phthalo blue, it's a really powerful blue. So can overwhelm yellow, which is usually pretty transparent, overwhelm the yellow quickly. So a little bit of blue goes a long way. Okay, so I've got a nice kind of spring green to work with, but I want to have something darker to start with. So I'm going to take a little bit of that green. Again, the green was just yellow and blue, mostly yellow, a little bit of blue. So I've got some green. I'm going to add a little bit of black to it, darken that up. I don't think I've said this yet. I think I say this every time I paint, but it bears repeating. Please don't judge how good you're doing on your painting based on how much it looks like mine. As long as at the end of this step you have some, brown, gray, and white tones in some lines for the wood and some green around the bottom, you're doing great. Doesn't have to look exactly like mine to be super successful. And in general, this is very important, in general, don't judge the success of what you're doing based on me or anybody else. That is a fruitless way of thinking. The only way to judge our success is how much better we get at the process. So that being said, let's get into adding some of this greenery. So again, I made a darker green here. I took the green that I had mixed, added a little bit of black to it. When you're adding the black, small amounts, black, light blue is powerful. And we don't want that too dark. Okay. I'm going to start with some haphazard brush strokes. Let me show you what I'm doing. So closer here. Okay. I'm using almost a cross-hatching motion. But what I want is texture. You can imagine if I just put horizontal lines, it doesn't do much to give us a natural texture, right? This looks much more natural than this does in this instance in terms of looking at leaves. So brush strokes can give us a lot of information about texture. And when I'm doing really sort of natural, when I'm painting natural things like anything in nature, keeping those brush strokes pretty loose, varied, that really helps. I'm going to lay out kind of where I want the greenery to start and where I want it to end. Okay? All right. So I know I want it all the way up here. So maybe 3/4 of the way to the top. And it's going to stop. Oh, I already have a stopping line right about here. And I'm just going to fill. Now, the way that I did the example over here is I worked with a really dark green. So green with a little bit of black. And then I would switch once I had used that darker green, I would go back to my lighter green. So again, just varying the colors. And it looks crazy, honestly. I get it if you're looking at it and you're like, Miss Pickles, I don't see it. When I go through that process of being self-critical, I just keep going. Just keep going. Just keep painting. It will get there. If you don't like the way your painting looks, you got to just keep painting till you do. That's the trick, my friends. And at this point, I'm just looking to get basic coverage. Again, just like with the wood part of the background, this just needs to be a base coat. It's not the focus of the painting. It's sort of the base material. Like I think of painting as making a map, right? So right now we're just adding the terrain. We'll get into adding like the streets and the buildings later. Right now we just need the basic information. And at this phase, it's not supposed to be pretty, even though this painting is sort of about the summer I turn pretty. But your painting will turn pretty also, okay? Just like that. So I'm almost there to get to where I have good coverage. Whoop. I've got a nice mixture, I feel like, of the dark greens, the lighter greens. Maybe I even go in and just with a little bit of yellow in my brush. Get some areas where I have a little bit of yellow showing. Because honestly, why not? The sun is shining. I think it's still summer for like another week or two. So, yeah. And if this is a tough process for you, in terms of just, hey, put some brush strokes in. Miss Pickles says just put some brush strokes in at the bottom of the canvas. If that's tough for you and it's like, no, you have to show me exactly where to put those brush strokes, how I get it. It's likely that you're a bit of a perfectionist in life. And so this is a very good exercise for you to just kind of loosen up, let go. There's no wrong way to do this. There's no wrong way to make art. It's one of the best things about being an artist is there's no rules. So enjoy the process. Now, I'm going to go over it one more time. We mixed a green. We used a daddy brush, took yellow, a little bit of blue, mixed a pile of green, added a little bit of black, and then started making some little brush strokes all around in a sort of almost diagonal covering on the bottom of the canvas. Worked with a little bit of the lighter green, a little bit of yellow, and again, just adding lots and lots of texture. If you get to the point where you don't love your background, but it's covered, let it dry. One of the worst things we can do is keep adding wet paint on wet paint because we end up with just one monotone color and it looks overworked. So once you get to just basic coverage, let it dry. Once we come in and do the hydrangeas, it'll be easy to go back in if there's little areas of the greenery that are bothering you. It'll be easy to go back in and rework those, right? So just let it dry once you get there. Now, the last thing before I tell you to take a pause is the edge of your canvas here. If you're working on a stretch canvas, you want to paint the rim. So you want to take the gray. I'm sorry, you have green on your brush now, so start with the green and just wrap that color around the rim. So that way it looks nice when your paintings hang on the wall. If it's, well, this isn't exactly a nice paint job here, but that's okay. If when your painting hangs on the wall, at certain angles when you walk by it, you'll see the edge, and if it's not painted, it looks unfinished. And you don't want to have to buy a frame because frames are expensive. So just take the color that hits the edge and wrap it around the rim. So it'll be mostly greens and then perhaps a little bit of gray or light brown along the other edge. Okay. Take a quick pause, catch up, get the background covered, finished. When we come back, we will start painting in the hydrangeas. All right, perfect. So hopefully that gave you time to finish the background and go ahead and paint up your rims. So the next little bit of work that we want to do is painting in the base layer for our hydrangeas. And so we're going to need the color itself. In my example, I have a sort of blue-violet color. You can take that wherever you like. You could make the exact same color. You can make them pink. You can make some blue and some pink. It's totally up to you in terms of how you want to do this. But if you're going to do blue and pink, you would want to lay down a darker red layer. The important thing here is that we have this dark base layer that we're going to lay all those petals on top of. Okay, so again, color is completely up to you, but you want to have enough range that you have something dark as the base and you're able to lighten it or tint it with white to get the depth of texture. Okay, so I'm going to mix mine. I'm going to grab blue. You want a good chunk of this color, so you're going to use quite a bit of it. So got a good chunk of that blue. I'm going to grab some red and swirl those together. Again, I'm looking for a blue-violet. And to that, I'm going to add some white. So I added a little bit of white. Hang on a second. I'm realizing it's kind of hard to see that color. Let me open. Let there be light. Okay, that's better. That's better. It's really hot in my studio, so I had my blinds closed a little bit to keep some of the direct sun out of here, but I'll sweat it. I'll sweat it out for you guys. Heck yes. Okay, so that's the color I'm working with. So again, I took a good amount of blue, a little bit of red. I added a little bit of white to it, not to really brighten it up all that much, but just so I could really see the tone of the color. A lot of times when you mix blue and red, it can look almost as dark as black, which is crazy. And actually, a lot of paintings that I do, portraits that I do, I use purple instead of black. Why not? Anyhow, that's that. In my example, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, I got 5 hydrangeas. The one in the corner here, I'm counting. I always like to paint in odd numbers. I love a 3, I love a 5. Those are what I like. Anyhow, I've got that blue-violet in my bristles. And I'm going to start with fairly circular shapes. Let's see, I'm going to have one up here. Okay. And rather than have just a circle, I'm going to go and kind of fuss around with the edges so that it looks more natural. You look at a hydrangea in nature, it's not going to be a perfect circle, right? It'll have petals and stuff sticking out, have a circular form, but it's not going to be that perfect outline of a circle. So here we go. Show you a little closer so you can see. I'm just kind of giving the edges of this a little extra love, just so it's not a perfect circle. All right, so I'm going to paint the next hydrangea right here. And just like I said before, if your placement of your flowers isn't exactly like mine, it's totally fine. Maybe you need to make less, maybe you need to make more. That matters not. So just enjoy the process. Here's a big one right here. And again, just kind of making those edges vary a little bit, just so they're not that perfect circular form. If, like mine, your greenery, your shrubbery doesn't go all the way up to the flowers, don't worry about that now. We're gonna fix that as soon as we put in the hydrangea. So I've got 1, 2. Here's my 3. And I'm gonna have a little guy right over here. Hey, little guy. And then one that I have sort of blooming in the corner of the painting. And make sure to take those colors around the rim. Like this one in particular hits the rim of the canvas. So let me bring this closer. So you can see the placement of mine. You can just go ahead and pause it. So we started by mixing up a base color for our hydrangeas. I'm doing all of the sort of blue-violet color, but maybe you were mixing some other different colors. Beautiful, love that for you. But we just need a base coat in the basic shape of our flowers. So I put them in fairly round or circular forms, and then just sort of added some extra scrubbing around the outside just so we have disrupted that actual line of a circle and it looks more like a natural form. All right, so this is a great time to take a pause, and I'll see you back in just a few. Okay, so while the hydrangea base that we painted in dries a little bit, it's a good time to go back and rework your shrubbery, your leafies. Like I said, in my example, I have a couple areas where we would see leaves. I really notice it right here. And also, I want to sort of deepen and darken the area that's underneath the hydrangeas. So I want to darken up these areas because if you think about it, if the sun were shining here down on our flowers, they would cast a shadow underneath those big blooms. So if you still have your green, fantastic. If not, go ahead and mix up a little bit more. And I'm going to get into a little bit of green and a little bit of black. Still working with the daddy brush. Feel free to switch over to mommy though if that feels more comfortable. And what I want to do is start by kind of filling in some of this area where we would see leaves. All right, do a little bit more. Set this down for a minute. Then I'm going to get into just a little bit of black. And like I said, underneath, I just painted my rims. Having this painting everywhere. Oh well, paint washes off. Right underneath where I have those blooms, I'm going to make sure to really sort of darken that up quite a bit because we'd see shadow there. Same thing here. We'd see a good amount of shadow right underneath that bloom. Just kind of darkening these up. Just like that. And again, just going in and adding, making sure you're filling in any space that needs to be filled in. If you like, you can add a couple of actual leaves. If you want to, it feels important to you that there's actual leaves visible, go ahead. But just take another little look at that greenery while it all dries up. Ooh, made that a little light, didn't I? That looks wild. Again, I'm not looking to paint a lot of actual leaves, maybe just one or two is plenty. I'm just wanting to darken up the areas underneath our actual blooms and still maintain some of that texture. Okay, I'll see you in a few, and we're going to start adding in all of the texture to our hydrangeas next. Okay, now it's time for the star of our show, hydrangeas. We're gonna use our mommy brush now. Time to break out, mommy. She's been resting, but she's ready to go. Okay, get the brush wet. Now what I wanna do is mix a color. I wanna keep a little bit of this base color, but I wanna mix something that's a couple shades lighter than what I have. So I'm gonna grab a little bit of white and a little bit of that base color and swirl those together. Okay, so it's probably 3 shades lighter than my original base color. Perfect. We're just lightening up a little bit of that base. I still have some reserved over here just in case. If you happen to run out, you can just remix and try to color match the best you can. But 3 shades lighter. Now, as you're mixing that, let me talk you through this. This is a similar thing that we're relying on with our greenery. With the hydrangeas, what I want to show you with this painting is that it's not necessary to paint every single detail. Okay, so if you take a look, let's look at that center hydrangea right there. It may be that your instinct when you look at a hydrangea is to want to only paint all of those little small blooms, right? The hydrangea is made up of a whole bunch of these little clusters of 4-petaled flowers. Now in my example, I've only painted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've painted 5 of them that are really visible. But if you look, the rest of the brush strokes are fairly random. And I'm going to show you how I did that. But what I want you to think of is at this phase, we're not looking to cover the entire surface of that base color with those 4-petal flowers. We're just looking to get started with some texture. Okay? So I'm going to work on this one right here. And I'm going to start with just a couple of couple of brush strokes here. Along the bottom, I'm using more sort of horizontally brushed in strokes. As I move my way up, maybe I have somewhere I'm seeing sort of two kind of meeting together. And again, for my perfectionist friends, this may be a bit of a struggle. What do you mean, Miss Pickles? I'm just putting in brush strokes where I want it. I get it. I understand that you want me to say, put a brush stroke here, put a brush stroke there. What I want you to do is start just trusting yourself. Know that there's nothing bad that can happen when we're painting. There's no way to ruin it. Maybe I add one of those 4-petaled flowers. But I'm not really too worried about that at this point. I'm just basically adding a lighter color to start giving some texture to those flowers. Okay, so that's what you're going to want to work on, is just beginning to add some lightness and some suggestion of some petals throughout your hydrangeas. I really like watching this one come together because it looks so random. And then when you finally add in the lighter, very white tipped petals of those individual flowers, it really does that perfect thing that a painting can do, which is to create an illusion. So it looks like that's an entire hydrangea flower filled with those small little 4-petaled flowers, but really there's only sort of a handful of them in each bloom. All right, no wrong way to do this. Try not to second guess yourself. And remember, please remember that it does you no good in life to be super judgmental of yourself, especially when you are new to something. It takes 10,000 hours to be an expert at anything, right? I'm not even 10,000 hours into being a painter, I would guess. Maybe I'm close, but not on specific things. Like I haven't done 10,000 hours just on painting hydrangeas. So I'm not a hydrangea expert. So if you've never painted a flower before, or if you've never painted a hydrangea, take it easy on yourself. It's okay. I guarantee you're doing great. And when you go to show other people the painting you made, they're not going to see this one as a reference. So they'll just see yours. And as long as you're following the basic steps, it's going to look like a little set of Belly's hydrangeas. So it's going to be perfect. Speaking of, if you're shy and you don't like showing your work, I totally get that. I can tell you that is normal. It can be a little daunting to share what you've made with other people. I'm not other people though. I've been doing this for a really long time. I've seen thousands and thousands of paintings. So when you guys are done with the painting, I obsess about seeing them. And I can also give you good feedback in terms of maybe things you could work on or whatever it is. So please, if you share your paintings on social media, tag me. I'm at Miss Pickle Paints everywhere. My email is hello@misspicklespaints. But yeah, send them my way. Even in a DM situation, if that's easy, find me, DM me. I'd love to see them. It's my favorite thing. Okay. Why don't you finish up with the base of your flowers, okay? And when I come back, we're gonna add another layer of petals. So I will see you just in a few for that. Okay, next thing's next. So In addition to adding lightened areas of our petals, it helps to add some dark dimension. And I'm going to do that at sort of the bottom, very bottom part of the flower by using a little bit of black and just small sort of scalloped brush strokes. Hopefully you can see that up close. I know we're working with sort of a dark color, and painting dark on top of dark is sometimes challenging to actually visually see, but hopefully if I bring this close enough, you can see what it is that I am yapping about. So, washed my brush. I'm going to grab just a little bit of black in my mommy brush. So using black in my mommy brush, we're just adding some dimensional brush strokes here, and that's particularly on the bottom of the blooms. And it's just, yeah, you can see, okay. It's just to give some extra dimension. Beautiful. Okay, fabulous. I'm going to do that on all the flowers. As you're doing this, work with small amounts of black. Before we go in and add the final layers of those highlighted petals, we don't want to have that black be wet. It needs to be dry. If it's wet, then we're going to end up with gray in the petals, which is not a cute look in my opinion. So a little bit of gray, a little bit of black goes a long way. All right, so I'm going to come through, and again, similar thing, just adding some dimension to the bottom of those flowers. Easy peasy. All right, so go ahead and finish up that step, and then our last thing we're going to do is come through and add all of those really bright sort of highlighted moments to our hydrangeas. So we're almost there. I'm excited. All right, we're here. It's the last step. Hooray! So we're going to add in the next level highlights of our petals for our hydrangea. So again, we're going to take that same base color. I ran out of the bit that I had lightened up, which is fine. I'm going to grab a little bit more of that base. I'm going to add a good amount of white to it. And I'm going to add a tiny bit more red to mine. I want to warm this up a little bit. It's quite a cool color. And I want to lighten it a bit. Warm it up a little bit. Maybe add a little bit more white. There we go. So adding that little bit of red makes it a little more warm, and because we have so much cool toned colors in the example, having that little bit of warmth will also draw the eye. And that's, we're directing the viewer's eye to these petals specifically, okay? So I'm going to start with one layer of petals. Let me bring this example over. One layer of petals that's just these lighter colors, okay? And then I'm going to finish up by coming in and adding a few of these very, very light, the actual sort of four brushstroke, four petaled flowers that we see in hydrangeas. And then we just need to do a little dot in the center of those guys. Okay, so I'm going to start with this tone. And I'm honestly similar vibes. Oh, I love this. It's like the best part of the painting when it starts to come together. I know you may at some point have been like, Miss Pickles, I don't know. I don't know if I like this. But at this phase, hopefully, it's starting to come together. And I would urge you, as always, don't try to follow my brush strokes exactly. Don't try to follow what I'm doing exactly. kind of take the same principles and make it your own. What's really interesting about painting in general, and particularly in my experience, painting with however many people. I've done paint nights where it's like 50 to 100 people. They're amazing. But you have 50 different versions of the same painting, and it's gorgeous. Your painting shouldn't look like mine because you're not me. That would be wild. So embrace that. Embrace that your painting is going to look like you made it. It's a beautiful thing, right? So keep working with that lighter color. Turn on some music. This is a really repetitive motion that you're doing. So put on like your favorite song right now while you do this and relax into it and know that there's no wrong way to do it. It's going to be perfect no matter what. But relax into it. I think the most meditative or relaxing moments in painting is when you're doing the same thing over and over again. Like if you're making 100 petals, it's very relaxing. Do your best not to cover up your base colors. So try not to brush over every single bit of that darker blue violet that we saw. Do your best not to cover all those. You want to have dimension, and to have dimension, we need to see dark. To see the light, you have to have dark. It's life, right? You got to have the darkest darks to have the lightest lights. So don't paint over all that base color. But yeah, turn on a song, get into it. I'll be back, and we'll finish up with those final sort of white tipped petals and flowers. All right. Okay, so let's get into the last bit. It's adding the actual 4-petal flowers, and then dotting a little dot right in the center of those. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put 3 of those flowers into each of the blooms, and then I will come back and add more. And when we're painting particularly details, it makes sense to go slowly, step back, see if we like it, go in and add. What I don't want you to do is start by adding 10 of those 4-petal blooms right to that center flower, and then you're going to think, oh man, I added too many. So start with 3 and do 3 in each of them, maybe only 2 in this half bloom that we see, and the smaller bloom. We only do 2. But let's get into it. So Mama Brush, I have that lighter, more reddish purple that I was using. So I've got that in my bristles. I'm going to dip into white. So just the tip. There you go, a little bit of white. And I'm going to start right in the center flower. And I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. One, 2, 3, 4. And last one. Let's do right here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to continue that process. So going up to this one up here. 1, 2, 3, 4. One, 2, 3, 4. And maybe one right here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So again, starting slowly. Don't want to, it's that thing where you want to go in and add the prettiest part of the painting and a lot of it right away. but it helps the eye if if there's not as much visual information. So just go slow. 1, 2, 3, 4. Mm-hmm. All right, so I've got 3 in all those, and I'm going to do 2 in these 2. Okay, I'm going to use the bottom of the brush to dot in that little white center. It's a great way to make fairly uniform dots. And I think I was painting with paint night for, I don't know, 4 years probably before, and it was a child was like, hey, if you use the bottom of your brush, your circles will all look the same. So learn something new, don't you? So obviously I'm going to paint in some more of those highlighted flowers. But I think you can see how having less as opposed to too many helps. Or maybe you like the look of too many. It's totally up to you. Put on your favorite song, finish up your painting, make sure to sign it. And I will be back to show off mine. I'm going to do a few more petals. And we'll say goodbye. How do we do? This is really fun. This is mine finished. I also went in and worked with a little bit of blue this time. A little bit of blue, added a couple petals with that. That's an extra little something, I feel like. Anyway, those are Belly's hydrangeas. I hope you guys had a good time. Please share your paintings with me. I beg of you. Sign up for my mailing list or subscribe or whatever if you want to keep painting with me. I hope I do more of these. I genuinely enjoy painting so much, and I want to be able to give you the confidence. I think the first part of the painting journey is getting to where you can take your brush and put it on your canvas and know what the mark is going to look like. Because once you have that down, once you have the confidence and the practice to know that you can make a straight line, you can make a curvy line, you can make a tapered line, all those different things. Once you have that down, you have that basic, skill set in your toolbox, then everything opens up because you're not spending time in your mind worried about, am I making this line straight? So keep practicing. There's so much good information out there. So many amazing artists. And I hope that you enjoyed me, Miss Pickles. I will hopefully see you guys again soon. All right.